And you are ready whenever you are.
On a daily basis, many of us feel very stressed. Things go on in life and we do many things to get rid of that stress. Whether it be exercising, going for a walk, hanging out with friends. Some of us tend to drink a beer, some of us tend to smoke, whether it's cigarette or marijuana. Many of us, not us in general, but many of the population do tend to smoke marijuana in order to ease that stress. Currently, marijuana in California is legal. And I'm here to talk to you about why it should be legalized, for many reasons. One reason it being this is less damage to you than alcohol and tobacco combined. Second reason is it's used for medical purposes. A quote from NBC News says, "Recreational pot is less dangerous than both alcohol and tobacco. Scientists assert to this. The safety of marijuana versus booze is not a new claim, but for the first time researchers measured the potential harm of the drugs in a more quantitative way. That is by comparing a lethal dose to how much of the substance is typically consumed socially. Their findings show the dangers of marijuana may have been overestimated in the past, while the risk of alcohol has been commonly underestimated. The report was published in Scientific Reports at the end of January. Compared to the potential death from typical recreation use of 10 other drugs, marijuana tended to be the safest. So if we have other drugs like alcohol and tobacco that are completely safe, as the government says, safe and legal to use, why should marijuana, which is research shows that it's more safe, should be illegal? And I've interviewed other people on the side of the research I did, and many of them don't use it on a daily basis and they only use marijuana. People tend to say it's a gateway drug, but all they do is smoke weed every now and then to ease the stress and things that are going on in life. Some people were really depressed and suicidal. They turned to weed to get rid of that as a form of therapy, and they're actually doing much better now. Marijuana is also used for medical purposes. Another quote from Paul Armento. He works for an organization to legalize marijuana. He stated the research done at USC. It said that the studies that utilize the so-called gold standard, the FDA clinical trial design, concluded that marijuana should be the first-line treatment for many diseases because it's doing much more than the drugs that are out there on the market. It's doing much more to help everybody else. And everybody that took the drug has been interviewed and they claim to be getting better faster than taking any other drug. People that smoke marijuana, it alleviated neuropathic pain, a notoriously difficult type pain to treat associated with cancer, diabetes, HIV, AIDS, spinal cord injury, and many other debilitating conditions. And I know that people think about marijuana, they think it's a gateway drug, it's just a drug, it's just gonna, pardon my language, screw you over in the future. If you talk to many people, whether they smoke marijuana or smoke cigarettes, the harm marijuana does is much less than cigarettes. I've talked to many people that smoke cigarettes and their lungs are pretty messed up as according to marijuana. And everybody that I know that smokes marijuana isn't on a bad path. They're going to school, they have their lives figured out, they're settled. I personally don't smoke marijuana. I don't think I would ever do it. But next time that somebody comes up to you telling you to legalize marijuana, I think you guys should take into consideration all the benefits it does and all the pros of it, and vote yes for marijuana. Thank you.
Ken, what did you think?
I think that was a very good speech. Your evidence are very solid and you present yourself very well. Something you need to work on though is a little bit more audience interaction, where I kind of felt very distant from you, and your interaction with the audience could have been a lot more better if you looked around a little bit more. put out a little bit more hand gestures if you can, but it was overall pretty good still. Your evidence are, of course, like very credible. USC. The interviews and such. I thought that was a very good touch, especially with the interviews, first-hand accounts. Good stuff. And yeah, I think that's pretty good. You could have just maybe a rebuttal to counter some arguments that people may have, but that was overall pretty good. I like it.
All right, well, the general introduction is okay. I think you could do something that's a little bit less vague and a little bit more involving, but we know what your topic is, and you've got a preview structure for what you're presenting. I think the supporting points are a little bit odd because the idea that we should legalize it because it's less dangerous, that doesn't seem like a justification for taking action. That seems like an argument against maybe like it's like a rebuttal argument that's being presented here. The legalization benefits, you are talking primarily about medical issues, and for medical purposes in California, it is already legal for those kinds of purposes. So what we ought to be seeing is some demonstration of its impact based on that policy. That policy has been in place for 20 years. Do we have fewer medical problems as a consequence? Has marijuana relieved the pain and suffering of people who have all these, neuropathic damage that you're talking about, or going through chemotherapy? I think from an emotional point of view, you could use some personal examples here to show how people have this reaction. The closest you get to that is a vague reference to somebody who uses marijuana for stress reduction, and that seems a little abstract and not very easily related to. I think you need to build that argument a little bit more if that's really a justification that you want to use. Like I said, the medical issues are not a bad way to go at this particular topic. You had some information from a very credible USC source, but it did sound a little conclusionary there at the end. It's like, oh, here are 10 things that it's great for, and our medical study says that it's great. I don't really know what the success rate is, how effective it is, and it sounds like it's interviews again, which doesn't sound like it's the most, you say it's the gold standard of research, and I'm going, okay, well, the gold standard of research would have some statistical information to go along with it, and we don't get any information like that, so I thought that was a little bit problematic. So I think you're underselling the emotional component. You've got some information on the medical benefits, but I think the argument should be a little bit more developed. And like I said, in particular on some of the medical benefits, I'm not sure that you've overcome anybody's uncertainty about how effective it might be in treating those kinds of things. I think we're still back to the issue. Well, maybe all you're talking about is stress relief for people who are going through those kinds of things as opposed to therapy and treatment for those kinds of things. And those are two different subjects. And it sounds to me like there's an argument that says it's therapeutic and useful for treating these kinds of things. But the argument for that kind of claim is not very strong. Delivery, I thought you did an okay job. I think that you spoke to the audience for the most part. You're engaged. It was very brief, though. It's not much chance to assess a lot of things because you're done in 3.5 minutes. And so it's, like I said, a little underdeveloped. You mentioned the gateway drug issue twice, the concept of it being a gateway drug a couple of times, and you dismiss it both times without giving us good reason to dismiss it. And I think if you're going to raise it as a potential rebuttal issue, then you ought to rebut it a little bit more, and you just kind of dismiss it without giving us any reason why that is a false assumption or it doesn't produce those kinds of consequences. All right, thank you.